Well, President Donald Trump's new administration has confirmed that its America First protectionist trade strategy means the US will not ratify the Trans-Pacific Partnership. The 12-country TPP deal was touted by the New Zealand government as giving New Zealand better access to globally significant markets. Well, trade deals were also on the agenda when New Zealand Prime Minister Bill English visited the United Kingdom earlier this month for talks with Theresa May, and that's ahead of Britain's withdrawal from the European Union. The Prime Minister is with me now in the Wellington studio. We're also streaming this live on the Morning Report Facebook page. Good morning.
Good morning, Susie.
Happy New Year.
And same to your listeners.
Let's talk firstly about Donald Trump and about the America First protectionism. Is this bad news for New Zealand?
Well, look, it's not in our interests, and we would argue it's actually not in America's interests in the long run either. But they've made a pretty clear policy decision. I think they may have executed it either now or very shortly. And so we're working on Plan B. And I think it was promising that last week the Prime Minister of Japan, when he was in Australia, made quite a positive statement about trying to proceed with a version of TPP without the US in it, if that's what it comes to.
So TPP isn't dead?
No, we don't believe it's dead, but Plan B could be a bit tricky. It's great, though, that an economy the size of Japan, and of course the Australian Prime Minister was positive as well, can see there's benefits in it, even if the US was the big prize.
Well, this is the problem though, isn't it? Does TPP remain a good deal for New Zealand without the access to those American markets?
In my view, probably does. We'd have to work our way through that. But we'll start the discussions on that. In fact, they've started already, and I would expect the Trade Minister will be in Washington before too long, but talking with his counterparts around the TPP countries over the next couple of months.
It's not worth scrapping TPP in its entirety, starting again and perhaps pulling in other countries, including China?
Well, that's possible. There are other vehicles for China if they've got an interest in free trade in the Asia Pacific. But the TPP is a fairly original, a fairly unique kind of trade agreement, and there are real benefits in it for New Zealand if we can just get everybody organised. But look, that's a big if. There's a lot of work to do. OK,
just staying with trade deals and Britain, that's the next one on the table, I guess. What are you wanting there?
Well, the next one on the table is actually the European Union. We can deal with Britain once it's left the EU, and that could be a few years away yet. With respect to the European Union, I was impressed with their enthusiasm for it, actually. They've got a lot of pressing issues there: Russia, Brexit, migration, slow economic growth, and I think they're keen to demonstrate they can execute a comprehensive high-level trade agreement with New Zealand.
Let's talk a little bit more about Donald Trump specifically. What is it that you feel that you agree with Donald Trump on, that you have common ground?
Well, look, it's not really for us to assess the politics of the US and let that determine the relationship. I mean, they've got clearly their own internal politics, which are quite different from New Zealand.
But there must be things when you meet other world leaders where you have common ground, that you have things that you would agree on. Do you not have that with Trump?
I would hope there are. I mean, I would imagine both believe in enterprise and business and people taking risks and making profits. That seems to resonate with him. I think some of this is what you make of the rhetoric. So, I mean, his focus on people who've lost jobs through globalisation is admirable in a lot of ways. In New Zealand, we have embraced globalisation because we believe that's the best way as a small economy to protect jobs and incomes. But we're also keen to see the benefits of growth spread right across the community. We don't want to see people missing out, and he's to some extent tapped into that.
OK, let's just talk a little bit about that. Interesting you raise inequality there. It seems to be one of the main drivers behind the rise of Trump and behind Brexit too. But also, if you look at Auckland and the Demographia survey out today, fourth most unaffordable city in the world, according to that survey. That's just one marker of inequality. So could you then argue, extrapolate that out, there could be a backlash here as a result of that inequality in New Zealand at the polling booths?
Well, look, we're making considerable progress on the housing issue, and the Demographia thing is one measure. There's other measures, but I don't think there's any doubt what's gone on there. In the last, the figures just came out, 10,000 new houses in Auckland in the last year, 30,000 across the country. So we're headed in the right direction, because in the longer term the answer is more houses on the ground.
But it's got worse over the last year, according to that survey, and indeed the ratio's gone up.
Well, and that's because prices, as long as prices rise a bit faster than incomes, which they have been doing, then that ratio is going to go that way. The response to it is the one that's occurring, and that is getting thousands of houses built. Over the next 12 months, you'll see the government building program crank up, because we can build thousands of houses in Auckland, and that's getting underway as well.
What about Hugh Pavlich's call earlier on? Would you consider this for a coalition to be built across parties to tackle house prices?
Well, look, another talk shop's not going to change it. What it needs is what's happening, and that is changes to the Resource Management Act to make the processes quicker. The Auckland Council doing what it's really starting to do quite well, and that is executing the processes fast, the building consents, the subdivision consents, and the government cranking up its own building program.
Prime Minister Bill English, thank you very much for your time this morning.